Everything shattered in a single moment when the number hit the room $75 million, and the silence that followed wasn't just shock, it was exposure. Not just a legal loss, not just a financial disaster. This was something deeper, something far more dangerous. Because the real question wasn't what the judge ordered, the real question was what happens when Harry can't pay. And that's where the entire story stops looking like a courtroom loss and starts looking like a collapse in slow motion.
Yikes! The Daily Mail wants $75 million and could well bankrupt Prince Harry following his disastrous legal action against the newspaper, which saw all 97 claims thrown out by the furious judge, Mr. Justice Nicklin. Harry, in a characteristically unhinged and mad rant, says, yeah, the verdict, it was shocking, unwarranted, and obviously a whitewash, yeah? Now, that is outrageous.
But what Prince Harry did, according to Charlotte, was to slip that white pill into her mouth. And that was done as a way of really cementing a bond of trust. He said, now I can trust you. As I said in my video, you don't do that with a polo, okay?
Because to be honest, his brother, Prince Harry, he owes me 1,400 quid because I was his dealer at Eton. Okay. So if you could ask him kindly to Venmo me or pay me in cash.
That judge is Mr. Justice Nicklin, and he's going to decide whether Harry will pay unlimited legal costs of up to $75 million. Money that Harry hasn't got. Better pray, Harry, that you're insured, and better pray that Mr. Justice Nicklin has a good night's sleep and doesn't get out of bed the wrong side in the morning.
That number didn't come out of nowhere. It came after something far more brutal: total destruction. Not partial defeat, not a complicated split decision. Total, absolute erasure, the kind that leaves nothing standing. Because when the ruling came, it didn't just say Harry owed money, it said every single claim he brought was wrong. 97 claims, 97 chances to prove something, and not one survived, not even a fragment. That's not defeat. That's rejection at a level that raises a darker question: what did the court see that the public didn't?
And here's the thing. Given the very flimsy nature of the evidence provided by Harry, all of which collapsed under scrutiny, not only could he and his fellow claimants, including Sir Elton John, be liable for tens of millions of dollars, but his insurers could walk away too, further adding to Harry's financial pain.
Think about that for a second. 97 claims, all dismissed. What does that actually mean? It means the court didn't just disagree, it dismantled. It means every argument, every piece of evidence, every narrative thread collapsed under scrutiny. And when that happens, something shifts, because it stops being about who's right and who's wrong and starts becoming about credibility itself. What happens when a judge effectively says, none of this holds up? What happens when the story you told doesn't survive contact with reality?
The fact is, they just failed to produce convincing evidence on any of 97 counts. Now that is a genuine horror show.
Was that 97 sort of individual stories that they were saying that they had presumably...
These have derived from...
They could argue what had been derived from that, and they had evidence to back that up in court.
But they didn't, and they did not have a case. And the indictment from the judge was just incredibly damning.
And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because losing isn't the end of it. Losing comes with consequences, financial consequences, legal consequences, reputational consequences that don't fade overnight. The judge didn't just issue a ruling. Justice Nickel wrote 436 pages explaining exactly why Harry was wrong. Page after page documenting inconsistency, patterns, gaps, contradictions, and buried in those pages was something far more damaging than the money, a narrative that suggested the truth itself was unstable.
Now, there are concerns that the insurers could dispute or reduce cover if the court makes a punitive costs award based on the judge's criticisms. Mr. Justice Nicklin's 436-page judgment criticised Harry for relying on suspicion rather than evidence.
And then something happened that didn't just raise eyebrows, it changed the tone completely. After all of that, after the dismantling, after the documentation, after the ruling, Harry didn't step back. He didn't retreat. He went public. He attacked the decision. He questioned the integrity of the judge. And suddenly, the story wasn't just about losing a case anymore. It was about what happens when someone refuses to accept the outcome, even after everything has been laid out in black and white.
Instead, They attacked the judges. There's a statement which attacked the judges' integrity. They sort of suggested that he was party pre, effectively, crooked, and that they hadn't been given justice.
You cannot question the integrity of a judge.
And here's where the tension thickens, because in any normal situation, attacking a judge after a ruling like this would trigger consequences, serious ones. But nothing happened. No immediate backlash, no escalation, just silence. And silence in moments like this isn't neutral. It's suspicious because it makes you wonder, are the rules the same for everyone, or do they bend when certain names are involved?
Expressing disagreement with a judgment is perfectly reasonable, but Prince Harry's attack on a High Court judge was over the top, personal, and wait for it, unacceptable. This is a top-level politician that's having to give Harry a dressing down.
Now shift your focus. Forget the courtroom for a second. Look at the number again. $75 million. What does that actually mean in real terms? Because this isn't someone with a steady income stream. This isn't a CEO with structured assets. This is someone whose money is tied up, inherited, finite, and the illusion most people have that there's endless wealth starts to crack the moment you look at the numbers. The inheritance, the book deal, the reserves. It sounds massive until you start subtracting, because the expenses don't stop. The lifestyle doesn't pause. The machine keeps running. Millions per year just to maintain the image. And that's where the real pressure begins, not with the judgment itself, but with the realization that the system sustaining everything isn't infinite. Then comes the contradiction. The house, the security, the image, every piece of it tied to one thing: perception. Because selling anything, downsizing anything, stepping back in any visible way doesn't just affect finances, it affects the narrative. And that narrative is everything, because once the image cracks, the entire foundation collapses with it. And now we arrive at the part no one can ignore: the gap. Insurance covers a fraction, a small fraction, leaving tens of millions exposed, completely exposed. And that's where the timeline becomes dangerous, because payments aren't theoretical. They're immediate. Deadlines, liquidation, real consequences moving in fast. And yet, even that isn't the most explosive part, because buried inside the ruling is something far more serious than money: the finding that Harry lied under oath. Not misunderstood, not misremembered. Lied, and once that enters the equation, everything changes, because perjury isn't just a footnote, it's a trigger for consequences that in ordinary circumstances go far beyond financial penalties. But here's the twist: nothing followed, no charges, no escalation, just documentation, recorded, filed, and left there. And that absence raises the most uncomfortable question of all: why? And just when it looks like the story has reached its breaking point, it shifts again away from the courtroom and into something far more unstable, far more revealing the institution itself. Because while the legal system delivered its verdict, the royal structure surrounding Harry didn't respond with clarity. It responded with contradiction. On one side, King Charles maintaining a protective posture, signaling stability, signaling containment. On the other, William making moves that feel colder, sharper, almost surgical. And that split isn't subtle, it's strategic. Because when William removes every trace of Harry and Meghan from royal spaces, that isn't emotional, that's deliberate, that's a message. And the message is unmistakable: this isn't repair anymore, this is separation. And suddenly, the legal crisis starts bleeding into something much larger. Because this isn't just about Harry paying a bill. This is about whether the institution itself believes in accountability. Because while King Charles appears to soften the edges, William hardens them. And that contrast creates tension at the highest level, because it exposes a divide over what the monarchy actually stands for: protection or consequence, loyalty or responsibility. And right now, both are happening at the same time, pulling the entire structure in two different directions. And then comes the moment that looks simple on the surface but carries weight underneath Harry visiting the king. Announced publicly, framed carefully, but stripped of something crucial: visual proof. No photographs, no shared images, no confirmation beyond words. And that absence doesn't feel accidental, because in a world where optics define reality, removing the visual narrative changes everything. It creates a gap, and gaps invite speculation, because when the public is told something happened but shown nothing, the question becomes unavoidable: what are they not showing? And it gets even more precise. Meghan not present in any visible way. The children not present. Just Harry, isolated, controlled, framed in a way that suggests access but limited access. Inclusion but conditional inclusion. And that level of control doesn't happen by chance. That's messaging. That's positioning. That's the institution deciding exactly exactly how much support to show and how much distance to maintain. Meanwhile, the legal clock isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. The interim payment approaching, the insurance decision still unresolved, and every day that passes without clarity tightens the pressure, because once that decision lands, whether coverage holds or collapses, the entire financial reality shifts again. And this time, there's no buffer, no delay, just immediate consequence. And then another layer surfaces, one that most people aren't even tracking yet: Parliament, verification, documentation that hasn't been confirmed. And the longer that silence continues, the more it stops looking like delay and starts looking like avoidance. Because in a system built on procedure, missing steps matter. And unanswered questions don't disappear, they accumulate quietly until they don't stay quiet anymore. And all of this is happening while Harry continues to maintain the same external image, the same lifestyle, the same signals of control and stability. But underneath that surface, the numbers are tightening, the options are shrinking, and the timeline is closing in. Because this isn't a distant problem anymore. This is immediate. Weeks, not years. Decisions, not speculation. And that's where the deeper question begins to take shape. Because for decades, the assumption has always been the same: power protects itself. Wealth absorbs consequence. Influence rewrites outcomes. But this case complicates that narrative because the court didn't soften its stance. It didn't compromise. It delivered a complete rejection. And yet, the aftermath still feels incomplete. Because despite everything, despite the ruling, despite the findings, despite the scale of the loss, Harry still holds position, still holds status, still exists within a system that cushions the fall in ways that aren't available to anyone else. And that contradiction sits at the center of everything. Because it forces one uncomfortable question: was this accountability, or was it controlled damage? And now the situation becomes even more unstable because the future isn't settled. The insurance decision still pending. The possibility of further legal consequences still unclear. The institutional response still divided. And above all, the financial reality still unresolved. Because $75 million isn't just a number, it's a test of whether the system enforces its rules or adjusts them when pressure builds. And hovering over everything is the transition that hasn't happened yet. Because as long as King Charles remains, protection remains a possibility. But when that shifts, when William takes control, the rules may not look the same. The tolerance may disappear, and the consequences that feel delayed now may not stay delayed. So what we're watching isn't the end of a story. It's the opening phase of something much bigger, because the ruling was just the trigger. The real outcome depends on what happens next, whether the insurance holds, whether the institution intervenes, whether the pressure forces visible change, or whether everything gets absorbed, managed, and quietly redirected.